Hi, everybody, and welcome to Author Boost. This event tonight is sponsored by HCI Books and the Best Ever You Network. I'm really grateful that you're all here with us. I'm Elizabeth Hamilton-Guarino, here with Christine Belleris and Lindsey Mach. And we are here tonight. We're going to go from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. You can join us. You can type in questions. Anything you guys want to ask about becoming an author or being an author already and giving your book a boost. This conference is for authors of all levels, all wannabe authors. And this is a roundtable. So it's a roundtable discussion. So if you hear us chat amongst each other or ruffle, move papers around, shuffle papers, coffee, whatever, this is totally sort of informal, like a candid discussion. Hello. People are going to join us in the chat and talk to us. If you have questions, type them in. But it's a nuts and bolts candid conversation about being an author, from book concept, from I've got an idea, I want to write a book, to I've got a proposal written, I've got a book written, whatever it is, to marketing and your finished product. We've got all the information for you to be successful here. So tonight we're going to be chatting with executives from HCI Books. We're so blessed to have their time and energy. We have Christine Belleris, we have Lindsey Mach, and we're going to have Christian Blonshine be joining us as well at 8:30. Christine's going to go first, followed by Lindsey. Lindsey and I may stretch a little bit to get to Christian at 8:30. We aren't sure how much time we've got here. But if you've got anything that you want to know or ask, just type that right into the chat and we'll answer your questions. So tonight we've got Christine Belleris first. She is the editorial director at Health Communications. We also call them HCI Books. You can go to hcibooks.com for more information. Again, we also have Christian Blonshine, who's the vice president and oversees acquisitions and day-to-day operations. And then we have the beautiful Lindsey Mach with us. Hi, Lindsey. Lindsey is PR and marketing, and she's PR and marketing director for HCI. And we're so glad to see everybody smiling, everybody relatively healthy. I know Christine, there's that beautiful smile. Christine does not feel so great, right, Christine?
Right, yeah.
But
I'm soldiering.
Yeah, but the what happened part is kind of a cool story in a way. I know you're ending up maybe with COVID, I'm not sure, but tell us about how you came about to be ill.
Not feeling so well. Well, my kids, they're 22 and 24. My daughter just graduated from American University, and my son, is a few years ahead of her. And they decided, about a year ago, we want to go to Europe. We'll never have this chance again. So they planned this epic backpacking trip across Europe that started in September, and they just came home last week on Tuesday. But they brought, a little something extra with them. It's like they started sick on Thanksgiving, and so I gave them a COVID test, and surprise, it was positive. So,
well, all the joys, huh? Well,
yeah.
I hope everybody's safe through COVID, and everybody gets to feeling better pretty soon, at least. And thank you for being here with us and your time and energy. I know you don't feel so great, so we're glad that you're here. So I'm Elizabeth. I'm the founder of the Best Ever You Network and the Best Ever You Show. We've got over 600 guests and millions of downloads over there. This is part of the Best Ever You Show. This show will go up on YouTube, and the audio will go over onto the Best Ever You Show and things like that. I'm a master life coach and author of 8 books, including one with HCI. I love my book with you guys. Thank you so much.
We've got one more coming.
Yes, and one more coming in 2024, right?
Yeah, it's hard to
I never know if I'm allowed to say the title. It's off a little bit, but yeah, here's the Change Guidebook. Everybody knows that one. Yay!
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you so much for my book that was published in April. So you guys, you can do it. You really can do it. I promise you, if I can do it, you can do it. That's my new saying. If she can do it, I can, that kind of thing. If I can do it, you can do it. So Christine, let's start with you. Again, thank you for being here. And if you guys have questions for Christine, let us know. Lindsey, feel free to, chime in if you need to or whatever. But Christine, again, great to have you here. You're the editorial director at HCI. So let's maybe start this discussion with what that is even. What does that mean? What do you do?
I basically take the, books from an idea to the finished product. So, I don't print them, but up to the bound books, the pre-press bound book stage. So, when proposals come in, I'll, look through the proposals that come in, and we evaluate them to see if they're marketable and publishable. We have a group of people that do that, though. We have an editorial committee. So, as a group, we'll decide what to do. But we have another editor also, Darcy, and she and I, are the first people to look through the proposals that come in and then decide if, they're worthy of going to the editorial committee. And then we decided as a group, whether we should go to the next stage, the publishing stage. So once that happens, I'll work with authors and also literary agents, contracting the books, the business end of it, though, that's just a small part of my job. And then I basically do developmental editing on the books. So we, work with the authors on, really reinforcing the book and bringing it up to, be the best that it can be. We also write I write the marketing copy that goes on our portal. So anything that you see online on Amazon or bn.com, that's something that I would actually write and, upload. We have also outside people, contract editors and proofreaders. So I, oversee them on the specific projects. I work with our art director on kind of conceptualizing the covers. So, I'm not an artist. I don't pretend to be one. But, authors we value authors' input and ideas. And we view this as a creative, collaborative process. We want authors to be happy with their cover, and a cover really does tell you what the book is about. So, we'll get the ideas together and, give them to our art director and kind of work through that process. And then I write the back.
That was fun
too.
Yeah, let me go to the cover. Stop at the cover for a second, then we'll go to the back cover for a second. Somebody's saying, I always appreciate when the team values author input. So that's a comment that we just got, because that was huge. That was so much fun working with you guys on, making the book. And I had never had that before. It's just like, here, here's what we're going to do, and here it goes. And that was so neat, because I know the art direction came back with, like, I think 4 different covers for us to choose from, and I actually printed them out and put them around actual books so I could look at it and see what they look like. And I threw it out into social media to see what they look like. I asked my mom, my kids, my husband, and it was really cool to get the feedback on the different covers. So, like, when you're a cover, everybody loves the covers of books, but it's not just like, oh, here's your cover. It's, you come back with, like, choices. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, well, we think it's important that if you don't like the cover of your own book, how enthusiastic are you going to be about promoting it? We want you to be happy. So, yeah, that's why we, at our company, we involve authors at every step of the process. So, I have an author, I'm working with him now on the developmental edits, and, he said, some of these changes don't sound like me. So, I allow him to, reject the changes I made. I want this to be in your voice. And he has a very specific voice. So, I understand when I might overstep. I'm not a dictator.
So keep going about the back cover, because I know I was asking about I stopped you at the cover. Now, what about the back cover? Is that as important as the cover itself?
Oh, sure, because, that's what people are going to be using to purchase the book, whether they're in the bookstore or online. So many books are purchased online, but so it's the same kind of thing. So you've got a few minutes, if you're standing in the bookstore as a reader, to flip the cover over and read what this book is about. So, it's marketing copy, basically. I like that part. I think editors enjoy writing too.
What's the difference? We have a question. What's the difference between an editor and a proofreader? Is there a difference?
So, yeah, an editor will make more substantive changes, changes to not only to grammar and punctuation, but structure. And, they might say, I don't understand what this means, what you just said, and I think you should say it this way. I mean, I like to tell my authors that editors are really readers who can ask questions.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
point. And what
because,
about a proofreader?
many times have you been reading a book and say, well, what does this mean? Or I don't understand this. So we try to head that off at the pass if possible.
Oh,
And so a proofreader would really be looking for, errors in grammar and punctuation, and then style things too. So we hire proofreaders after the book is typeset.
yeah. So
So, they might like the running heads at the top of the book. If that sometimes those are wrong. They look for things like that
yeah.
too, or pagination, or if you have cross references in a book.
So
See page 25, and it's really not on 25.
yeah, yeah. Stuff
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, that like an index type thing, or even like a table of contents. You
Right, yeah, we try not to paginate the book in the table of contents till the end, because things change.
yeah.
And then indexing too, we don't index very many of our books, but when we do, obviously you have to wait till you're sure nothing's going to roll. Although sometimes, we do have something happened and, oh, I've got to take these 5 pages out, but we've already indexed the book. I had that happen this summer.
Yeah.
So I had to go through and find all those pages that changed and make sure they were correct.
That's a lot of work. Lindsay, I have a question for you. The second that book comes into HCI and you're going to get, you have your book published and it's coming out in like 2024, 2023. Are you involved?
So once the authors come in and start working with us, they're primarily working with Christine, like on the editorial process of getting the book, published. But that being said, I do, start meeting with authors and start planning and just get an idea of things that they had in mind for, book publicity and marketing. And then just to give them kind of an overview of what we do at HCI so that they can start thinking about it. But primarily, their focus is still on actually getting the book, as Christine mentioned, edited, going back and forth with the editor, reviewing page proofs and all that, coming up with the cover.
But it's coming your way.
Yes. Yeah, I'm lucky I do get to give input on the covers, which is fun.
Oh, I love that with you. I'm like, which one should we do, Linz? That's super fun. Okay, so you mentioned, I'm going to go back a little bit and I'm going to ask you just a series of questions that we've sort of prepared for this. I think they're common questions that people would ask. And again, to those listening, if you want to ask a question, just type it on into the chat and we'll ask it to Christine and Lindsay. So you mentioned agent. What is an agent and how do I get one? Again, I'm gonna ask the
$64,000 question. I mean, because it could be, they're literary agents. So there are people who, take books and then try to find publishers for the authors. And they do take a cut of the proceeds, but, they're good at finding the publishers. So it can be as hard to find a good agent as it is to find a publisher. I know the bigger houses require agented proposals. They won't look at something that's not agented because they want, the higher quality products. So usually that's the case. And good agents will work with the author on the proposal before it even comes to us. So, they help you structure the proposal and make sure you've got all the, the pieces in place to make a good proposal, because authors don't send an entire book in. Usually it's a couple of sample chapters and a marketing study. So you list the market and how your book differs and what the other products are out there and how your book differs. So an agent will work with you on that, with an author on that part of the proposal.
So an author just doesn't say, "Hey, I've got an idea for the book. Here's the title, and would you like to publish this?"
Well, after, oftentimes though, once we know somebody, we can go to that stage. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, the agent will help pull all those pieces together initially.
Tell us a little bit more about the proposal. Like if you, actually I have another question too. If you already have a book and you're like, oh, I've self-published this book, but I want to traditionally publish this book now. Is that a thing?
Yeah, people have done that, but that can be difficult because um, our customers, the booksellers, look at an author's track record. So they want to see how a book sold before. And self-published books generally don't sell as well because authors just don't have that reach in the market.
Yeah.
So yeah, that can be difficult.
Okay. And so is it best to maybe leave that book alone and think about, okay, I'm going to do a new one, and here's a new proposal and things like that, and shop around a new book idea and a new proposal?
Yeah, I mean, you could even revise what you already had.
Oh,
Yeah, it kind of depends on the numbers.
okay. And tell us again what a book proposal is. Like, what's just one more round of like what a book proposal is again, and what's maybe in that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you go on our website, we actually list what we require in a book proposal, but essentially it's an overview of the book, and then a couple of sample chapters. So maybe an introduction and 2 sample chapters, and then a listing of the market. So who do you see as the market for this book? Is it women over 50, and how are you going to reach them, and what other books out there are kind of like your book, but then how does your book differ from those books? We're always looking for something new and different.
Yeah.
Which can be difficult. Is there anything new that's been written out there? I don't know. But there are new authors. Yeah, this is your slate on it. And self-help, we do self-help primarily, and it's a very crowded, competitive market.
It sure is.
Yeah.
We have a question for you. It's a cool market though. You get to know your author peers and the other publishers and things like that. It's a tight knit kind of group, as competitive as it is in a way. It's interesting. Everybody kind of knows each other, and you go on each other's podcasts and stuff like that. So it's pretty fun. And that probably happens in most industries. You get to know everybody. You have a question from someone. Does the author come up with the title for their book, or does their agent or publisher or all three collectively come up with the title?
It can be all three collectively. Like an author might come in with a title, and then we decide, this really isn't going to work. So, we'll keep refining that process. And then sometimes, we'll have the title for the book, and we'll have the cover, and we present our products to our sales team. And they'll tell us, well, this isn't going to work for these reasons. So you need to go back to the drawing board. And we don't like to hear that, but it's happened before.
Somebody says, "I love that. Thank you." What about the tagline for the book, or the second part of the book? So, like for example, the Change Guidebook, and then the second part is how to align your heart, truths, and energy to find success in all areas of your life. Who comes up with that part?
Again, that's a collaborative process. But you could go on forever with that subtitle, but that usually really explains it. So the title we want the title to grab the reader, and the subtitle to explain.
Now, is that unique to nonfiction books? It seems like it is, where it has kind of two things working, or because most children's books you see, just the title.
Yeah, I think that is, more specific to nonfiction.
Yeah. Okay. And which part sells the book? Is it the first part or the second part? Is it the or both?
I don't know. I think they have to work together.
Yeah. And people are like, yeah, you love collaborations. Yeah, I do too. I collaborating is my favorite word. I think compassion or collaboration. I go back and forth between which one's my favorite word, but collaborating.
And the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is titles are not copyrightable. Unless it's a trademarked.
I didn't know that.
Title, like Chicken Soup for the Soul was a trademark title because it was an entity of business. But otherwise, books can have the same title. So, we like to have a title that's unique, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Well, you brought up Chicken Soup for the Soul. So do you want to talk about that book a little bit? That's a pretty interesting brand, trademark, books, everything. Do you want to take that a little bit, or?
Oh, sure. I mean, we were the original publisher of that series, and I started at HCI right after the first one, and stayed. I was, then stayed for 10 years and then left for 10 years when my kids were little, and then came back. But, we had no idea, I think, that it was going to be as successful as it was. But yeah, it just exploded. I mean, we had started out publishing recovery books. So, books for people in dysfunctional families, systems. We published John Bradshaw's early books. He had a big PBS series. And Janet Whiteitz, who really did have a truly unique book, Adult Children of Alcoholics. That's, something that nobody had identified before. And that, launched us in this one direction. We carved a niche out, as a publisher of recovery books, because we're, a small house in Florida. So, usually publishing houses are on the coasts, or maybe in Chicago, but then, that market became saturated because the other publishers saw, well, this is working for these people. So everybody chases that golden ring. So, or brass ring, is that it?
Whatever, either one, both, platinum, whatever it is. You have another question, going back to the covers. What are your thoughts on building a certain cover look for authors with multiple books? Should each book cover be somewhat? Should each book cover somewhat resemble the rest to maintain continuity and familiarity among the readers? Great question.
Yeah, that is a good question, and I think that it depends on you want a book series to be successful. So, yeah, I think if you were successful with that first book, you'd want to play off that, by finding a look then for subsequent books.
Good. Yeah. Great question. That was Jennifer Vaughn. Thank you, Jennifer Vaughn. That's a fiction. She's a great fiction writer and a news anchor in New Hampshire. She's a lovely, lovely friend of mine. She has the best questions, and she's an incredible editor as well. So to all of you who need books edited or whatever, Vaughn is there. All right. Let's go down to, let's see. We talked about who edits what I've written. Do you think people get caught up in editing their own work to make it like completely perfect before it even sees you? And does it have to be? I mean,
authors should make a book as clean as possible before it gets to us. They shouldn't wait and have us do it. And a lot of authors actually will hire somebody before a book comes to us, and that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because everybody sees something different. That's when, as I said earlier, I do a developmental edit, and it goes back to the author. Then the book will come back, and we send it to a copy editor who will see, different things that maybe I didn't see. And then we have 2 proofreaders at 2 different stages, and they see different things too. Everybody sees different things. So you want to have as many eyes on a project as you can.
Yeah.
And the worst thing is to have the book on press and the pressman says, "Oh, I found this error."
Yeah. It's brutal. Yeah. What about traditionally? What about in self-publishing? Could you talk about that? If you're self-publishing a book, do you still need to edit your book?
Oh, sure. Yeah, you want to make the book as good as possible, as readable as possible. Because you have, a self-published author has, a higher hill to climb.
Yeah, with all the different things, right? You've got the same thing as a traditional published author, but potentially no team behind you unless you hire the team.
Right.
Which would be the proofreader, the editor, the copywriter, the cover design, the layout of the book, like the structure of the book. I think sometimes when you open up a self-published book, you can tell the interior hasn't been designed. The font might be off, or the pages don't break right, or whatever. So all of those details are just as important to have a successful self-published book as well.
Right. Yeah.
Correct?
I mean, even with our covers, our graphic designer uses all the fonts and the look from the cover of the book inside, because you want that seamless transition. And you often notice in self-published books, you don't often see that.
Yeah. What's we have another question here coming in. What's hybrid publishing? What does that mean?
I think I don't know if you could talk more about this, Lindsay. But I think it's a cross
Like a
between
combination?
the
Yeah.
two. Yeah, a combination. I think.
Where you're maybe
You-
paying to have
you-
people publish and things like that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's my understanding of it, is that it's like it's kind of a collaboration between a publisher and an author, but the author's paying into the project, or
Yeah.
some type
Okay.
of arrangement.
People
Yes,
ask
and they have
questions about
different
that.
levels. I'm going to buy into menu A, and I get, all these things. Yeah.
All right, we'll ask Christian more about that. We'll move that question over into his court. What about talk more about the various roles from the second, like the process in terms of like what happens when with a book. Like, okay, here's my idea and proposal, then what happens as an author?
Mhm.
Like, what could
Yeah.
you
So
expect, and what's the timeline? I know one of the things that when I was working with you on the Change Guidebook, I was I thought it was really cool how you had everything planned out. And you're like, if we get the final edits done here, the book will come out on this date. And and you're talking like maybe a year or two. Can you talk about the
yeah,
time frame?
we don't go out 2 years, but some
Yeah.
bigger publishers do.
Yeah.
It's usually a year.
Yeah.
If we have 9 months, that's good. But you have to do all of this marketing work in advance. So you have to get a description of the book online, pretty far in advance. And the cover also. So then you start working on the developmental edits. So, and that can be like a month-long process. And then we usually give our copy editors 3 weeks to a month. And then you have to do a typesetting design sample, which we let our authors, pick and choose also with that.
Yeah.
So that takes a little more time, so all these steps. Then you have the two proofreading stages where it goes to an outside proofreader. So that's, a week to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we give authors the opportunity to also, proofread the book too, to make sure, we didn't miss anything.
Yeah.
So that's why it takes so long. Then you have to back up because it goes to a printer, and we're not in charge of that. That's like 10 to 12 weeks in advance of the on sale date.
Okay. Yeah. So like if my book is coming out in, like, let's say April, when's the book, like, if you back that up, when am I done writing that book? And just sort of like, then I move over to Lindsay and like, let's market it.
Yeah. Well, so you'd want to have it to us. We like 9 months.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
6 months is the shortest, but usually 9 months.
Yeah. What is pre-ordering? What does pre-ordering mean?
That's readers can go before the book is actually on sale and place orders. And so, that's good because a retailer might, if they see a lot of pre-orders coming in, they might order more copies at the store level.
Yeah, I had a really nice landing, runway there before the book came out live. I was really happy with the pre-order link. That was like, okay, I got some time here to breathe and think and so forth.
Elizabeth and I worked on pre-orders you had a really long time to work on them. So that was great.
Yeah. Well, it was good to get the community going again. It's like, okay, here's a new book, and get everybody re-engaged and engaged and so forth. Well, and Lindsay, do you want to talk about that a little bit, about like how important those pre-orders are?
Yeah, and as far as know I mentioned before that I'm not working with authors kind of right out of the gate on things, but once that book is available for pre-order online, where the pre-order can be taken, which isn't right away, once the manuscript comes in usually, I start working with authors, like giving them ideas of how they can generate pre-orders using their author platforms, which we'll talk about later tonight. Um, social media, mailing lists, different things like that. And I provide them with tools that they can use and just help them brainstorm so that they can start generating some more pre-orders.
Yeah, it's noisy out there, don't you think? It's noisy out there with all these books and people and famous people mixed up with the traditional public, with the self-published and everything. We're all together. So if somebody really famous has a book coming out, and yours is there too, well, guess what? it's it's competitive. Is that the right word, Christine? It's
Yeah, definitely competitive. Yeah, you can always tell when these famous people they start appearing on all of the news shows, and it's like, oh, they must have a new book out. And sure enough,
There it is.
there it is.
The other day, I'm like, "Where's the book? I'm waiting." And there it was. Yeah, it
Or
was
the famous people who write children's books.
yeah,
I always wonder, are they really writing these themselves?
yeah, yeah. I hear you. It's very, very competitive, a very competitive industry. We've got a question. How do you see numbers of pre-orders? Amazon doesn't share that. Good question. I, Lindsay, how do you know? Like, I remember what's the service that tracks book sales? I can't remember the name of it. You probably have to sign up for it.
I think you're probably talking about BookScan, but internally, I don't know what this is at every single publisher, but at our at HCI we have a tool where we can actually see Amazon pre-orders on a report. That's the only retailer we actually get the pre-order data from, but we do have a way to track them. So it would just be, but it's not something that's visible to authors.
Yeah. I know when my book was in pre-order mode, I'm looking at Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, and Amazon, and going to all three, seeing if the rankings are going up and stuff. So we're paying attention as an author to the rankings and
Mhm.
to see what's happening. But yeah, we were getting one report. Somebody has another question. What are the biggest hurdles in garnering pre-order interests for non-famous writers? So if you're not famous, how do you get that traction to say pre-order, or buy my book, buy my book? Um, huh.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as far as like kind of what you were saying, if somebody's like an unknown author, like it is very difficult if you don't have some type of a platform, or if you have like you don't have a publisher that has like mailing lists and different ways to get the word out for pre-orders. So pre-ordering, I think, lends itself. It's easier for someone if they have like a social media platform, like Elizabeth herself. She has the Best Ever You network, or publishers might have mailing lists and different things like that. But that is a challenge. You would have to potentially like kind of try to build your platform. If you're doing talks, like speaking engagements, you could carry some flyers and try to just kind of mention that your book's available for pre-order and try to get them that way. But it is challenging if you don't have a platform as an author where you have people you can go to and ask to do the pre-order.
Yeah, borrow somebody's platform. Like, get to know somebody and ask, and flat out ask. It's the worst that somebody's going to say to you is no, I don't do that. But it's a really good ask for if somebody's got a bigger platform, just ask them to borrow their platform. We do a lot of that at Best Ever You, especially on the podcast. You can start your own podcast. There's lots of ways to get people familiar with you as an author. Got another question, Christine. How are you doing? You good still?
I'm okay.
I'm so grateful. Thank you for being here because this is such good information. I think people are loving this from the comments. Give us a thumbs up if you're loving this. During the pre-order state, can you send the link out to your own community that you already have established? And can you also get famous people to endorse your book? Yeah. Go.
Yes. So as far as sending out the link, exactly, like you could send out the link to get people to pre-order on Amazon or other retailers. If you have a social media platform, just going back to what Elizabeth was talking about before, as far as like borrowing other people's platform, you could do some like podcast interviews and different things like that, where you can talk about the book a little bit in that it's available for pre-order. And that's another way to get pre-orders generated. Especially, I mean, there's so many podcasts now, and traditionally kind of media for book was more, really geared toward when it was available, but things are going, being released early, different things. So that's another good way.
I know with my book, with the Change Guidebook, one of my goals, huge goals, because I just respect him so much. One of my idols is Jack Canfield. And I was like, oh, I just want him to endorse this book. That would be the coolest thing ever. And that was my goal. And he's right here on the back cover. And I can't tell where I'm pointing, but he's right here on the back cover, having endorsed the book. That was majorly huge to me. I mean, and you never know when you ask somebody like that, are they going to say yes or no? And boy, when you get that yes, it's like, oh my gosh, that just happened. So don't, I think one of my answers to that is to, ask. Don't expect a no either, because that's the energy you don't want. Ask with, I'm open to the world giving me a yes here, and keep your energy open and your heart open and your mind open. And you may just get that yes. And I remember that, Lindsay. I'm like, he just endorsed the book. It was the coolest thing ever.
I remember how excited you were. You were very excited.
Well, and actually, Jack at his seminars used to tell people, ask, 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 ask.
Yeah.
And ask, if you ask the first person, they tell you no, keep going till you find somebody who will say yes.
Yeah. And it's the coolest process, and if you get a no, it wasn't, might not have been meant to be. Sorry, I got my words all mixed up, but don't let the no sink in. Don't give up right then and there. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I got a rejection. Let me tell you, my stack of rejections is impressive. I got them throughout my whole life here. So, the yeses are what drives us forward and so forth. Okay, we have more questions. That's just my take too, by the way. These guys are the pros. Are these decisions up to the agent and publisher? I don't know what that means. You might have to elaborate a little bit on that. Do you mean the pre-order part? Well, we're going to hold that question and keep going for a minute. Elaborate for me on what you mean by decisions up to the agent and publisher, if you could. Okay, I want to be an author. I have absolutely no idea where to start. There's a question for you. Where do I start?
Do your homework first. Right. So, first of all, you have to have an idea, but it has to be a marketable idea, because this is a business. So, I tell people, go to the bookstore, see what's there. See who is publishing the kinds of book that you want to publish, and find, write to those publishers. But yeah, you need to see what's selling, but understand how your book is different, and you need to be able to elaborate on that and, succinctly identify what is different about your book from all the books that are out there. Sometimes, I go to the bookstore and I get depressed seeing you go to the remainder section at Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
Boy, all these people had this great idea, and
it's tough. It's
tough.
Competitive out there. It is really, really, really competitive. I always say, writing a book is one thing, and then like finding the audience for it, the readers for it, the momentum for it, the marketing for it. It's tough. And
just because you might get on a big talk show, a national talk show, doesn't mean the book's going to sell either. It has to be a grassroots kind of thing, people saying, oh gosh, I love this book, and you have to read it.
Yeah, I have almost 1,000 people in a group right now. I think I thank them every day. I go in there and I'm like, thank you. It's like, we're climbing to 100 views. Let's go. And that's exactly what it is. It's that they champion you as an author. And without the people championing, whatever that word is, you need your champions behind you to go forward and so forth. Okay, that was the question for pre-order. Who decides pre-orders? Is that you guys, the publisher, or is that the author themselves or the agent? Like, who decides when a book goes into pre-order mode or how long it goes into pre-order mode?
Well, I guess it would depend on which publisher you're working with. I'm not sure. I know, HCI, we're working with Simon and Schuster as our distributor, so they have like a specific schedule as to when books become available for pre-order. I'm not sure if that, and Christine, you might know if all publishers have the same schedule. But like kind of once the book's officially, available for pre-order on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, those different sites with the cover art where, it looks really polished and ready to go. That's kind of the green light to go ahead and do pre-ordering, but I guess it might be different based on who you're working with.
Yeah, Christian, when he comes on, he might be able to.
Okay, I'll make a note. What about, can you put a pre-order mode on a self-published book? Do you know that answer? Or is it pre-order just for traditionally published books? I think I know the answer. So I'm a human being who has books that I've self-published and traditionally published. And when we put a book out on Amazon, like a children's book, we don't seem to have a pre-order window.
Okay.
So if you see one, correct me, because I would love one on some of the things. So yeah. Does that answer your question to the user who's commenting? And then we have a question. What's a genre? What's that mean in the book publishing world? And can you switch genres, or are you always in one of them?
It's basically the category. So self-help, psychology, then there's the overall nonfiction or fiction, but then there are these subcategories. So, health and wellness, just if you go to the bookstore, you'll see the genres when you try to find a book, the shelving categories. And then sometimes though, the bookstores will put things in a place, even though we'll identify the genre on the back of the book. So those stores will know where to place the book when they're shelving it. But we had an author, she wrote a very funny memoir about her weight loss journey, all her struggles with weight loss. And I went to my local Barnes & Noble, and they actually had it in the diet section, like the diet cookbook section, which...
Did you move it? Did you take all the copies and move them? You're like, hey, I'm Christine. I'm moving these. That'd be pretty funny. Do you know the name of that book? That sounds like the story of my life.
Yeah, I know. That's I could really relate to it. It was called Getting Wasted, but WAISTED.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Okay, I'll see if that's available. She's getting some sales. All right. Does anybody have any other questions for Christine? I think we're going to let Christine rest. She's been a trooper here. Anything else for Christine? Jennifer, did you have anything else that you wanted to ask? Great conversation. Christine, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think that's it. Just don't give up. Be positive, and there's still books to be written, and we want to see what you have.
Yeah. You guys are very open about things. Everybody says thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, are you going to exit the conversation?
I think I am. If there are no other questions, I might.
Okay. And if you guys have questions, if Christine leaves and you think of questions, just type them in, and we can add them to the conversation. We can do a blog. We can do all sorts of stuff. So if you think of questions like, oh, she left and I forgot to ask her that, we've got you covered. So just type it on in, or get a hold of me, Elizabeth@besteveryou.com, and I'll make sure and pass the questions over to Christine, and we'll get you answers. So
okay.
Thank you, Christine. We're so grateful for you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. All right, Lindsay, you ready?
Yep, I'm
ready.
ready.
Our conversation is going to shift to marketing and PR. This is the wonderful and very talented Lindsey Mach here with me. I'm going to read this. Or do you want to talk about who you are and what you do?
No, you can read it.
I'll read it. I'm actually going to read this. Okay. Lindsay's the public relations and marketing coordinator for HCI. In her role, she plans and manages the marketing and publicity campaigns for HCI books. This includes working with the authors on social media coverage, and author events, and more. Lindsay has over a decade of experience in the publishing industry, working in both trade and educational publishing. She has a bachelor's degree in communication studies with a journalism minor and a Master of Arts in Teaching degree from Northeastern University. So, anything else you want to add?
No, thank you for having me.
I love your dogs. Your dog. There's one, right? I think there's one.
Yeah, and I have a dog named Eddie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Sometimes I thought you had 2 dogs, but that's me, right? I have 2
No.
dogs. You have 2.
You're the one with 2 really cute dogs.
Oh, they're fun. Okay, so you and I always say it's one thing to write a book, and it's another thing to market a book and get it selling, find its audience, find its readers, and so forth. Right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, writing getting the book into the finished product is just the beginning. Once you have it, then you have to make sure that readers, find it and get into your markets and find a way to reach people.
Yeah. It's kind of like, but wait, there's more. Because, I know as an author, I'm like, okay, I can take a break. I wrote that. It's all being printed up and everything. And it's like, no, no, you can't. It's
Yeah.
kind of like when almost the real work begins in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard from a lot of authors that they really underestimated how hard, like, kind of, how much work marketing and publicity is for the book. And to your point, it's like you finally get the milestone of having the book printed, and then your work's just starting over again. And I do encourage authors, whether they're traditionally publishing or self-publishing, to start working on coming up with the marketing plans early and planning for that, because you do really want to have a plan in place, and have it, even as long as you can take pre-orders for the book, have it kind of started up when the book actually goes on sale.
Yeah. And what does that mean? Like, what would a marketing plan look like? Because to me, that's like, when I think about books, one of the things that I can't plan for is where it's going to go for real. And to me, that's the coolest thing in the world. We've done things with the Change Guidebook that I'm like, wow, I can't believe that went there. I didn't plan for that.
Yeah.
But so what's a basic marketing plan look like?
Yeah, and just to be more specific, like, depending on what kind of book you're publishing, like, there's reference books, textbooks, trade books, like, Elizabeth's books that are self-help, children's books, which Elizabeth has as well. So there's all different types of books that you could be publishing. So your marketing plan would really be different and customized based on what kind of book you're publishing. Like, as an example, like, you wouldn't really focus on, like, doing podcast interviews if you have, like, an educational textbook that's meant to reach professors. So you kind of want to think about, like, who your market is, where they are. I'm going to talk more about, like, from, like, a trade perspective of, like, since HCI does mostly the self-help books, as we've talked about on the call. That would include things like doing interviews, traditional media. So that's like TV, radio, podcasts. There's a lot of online websites, that post excerpts. We'll do author interviews, all sorts of good stuff. And then there's, social media influencers, like bookstagrammers. There's, book talkers. So and really, like, based on what kind of genre your book is, you want to kind of find out where those opportunities are. If you published a children's book, I know that on Instagram and Bookstagram, like, children's books are really popular. So that would be a good place for you to focus your energy. Whereas you might not, you would do more like, school visits and that kind of thing. As opposed to if you were doing a trade book with on self-help, you'd probably be trying to set up some talks, looking for influencers and podcasts that focus on, if you're writing about, like, trauma or, healing, that kind of thing, you would look for people who are talking about that on interviews. But, the essentials of, like, a marketing plan would be some type of, like, social media, maybe a website. Like, a lot of authors already have some type of a website, so they can either add to that, or so you could make a book website depending on if it made sense for your book. Speaking and talking, opportunities for bulk sales of the book. Media, as I mentioned, which could be anything from TV, radio, interviews, newspapers, podcasts, websites. There's, even, like, if you were writing, like, a cookbook that was for, like, special diets. Years ago, I worked at a publisher where we specialized in, like, gluten-free cookbooks. So we would do outreach to, like, the gluten-free and celiac disease groups. So, places like that where it's more like there's a specialized market and they're looking for your products. And you can reach out to them and let them know that the book's going to be available, see if they have an opportunity for like a book review, see if they'd be interested in having you do a talk or do some kind of like an author profile. There's all sorts of great, creative ways you can work with, in a lot of them grassroots, that you can publicize a book. And then there also are opportunities like advertising, that you can pursue as well in like niche categories. So if you're writing a book on like addiction, you might look for websites or magazines or different platforms where you can advertise that it's really for that community. So you're hitting your target market.
Yeah, in that genre. So like if you have a fiction book, for example, how consistent do you think you need to be? I guess with any kind of book, but fiction seems to be particularly noisy. There's a lot of fiction books out there and so forth, and I know we've got a lot of fiction authors with us tonight, not nonfiction, fiction. How much time and effort do you really think you need to put into marketing your book? Is it like once a month, every day, 5 times a day? I mean, if you're sitting around and your book isn't selling, is that your cue that you've got to do more? Instead of feeling like, oh, I've written a bad book and this is selling, that kind of thing. I know people are like, oh, I'm not good at this. And I read the books and I'm like, no, it's a very good book. It just hasn't found its following yet. How do you
Yeah,
do that?
I mean, I think that, I've seen authors who've spent a lot of time promoting their book and then others that haven't. And, like if you're really like, committed to, making the book sell and, to doing the publicity and marketing, I think it's really an everyday job, as Elizabeth can attest to.
It's an everyday, all day thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of, and definitely there's like that window of when it is available first where it's new and fresh. I think you have the best opportunities then. That being said, once you have a book, as long as the topic's evergreen, you can continue to, set up talks and book signings and, do interviews and just always mention the book. So there is opportunity for kind of continuous promotion, but that, right out of the gate, like that window is like the most important time for you to focus on it. And yeah, it's, it does require a lot of work to make it successful.
Yeah. They're timeless though. That's the thing I think that people forget the most. And sometimes they come back in popularity, get whatever's happening in the world. People are like, hey, I'm reading this. And it's like, wait a minute, I did that 5 years ago or something. But their books are timeless. You always have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, authors who do have some type of a speaking program as part of their like business, or maybe there's like a specialist and they do talks. It's a really good opportunity to sell, in bulk. And that can be something that you're kind of continuously doing. And it doesn't matter if the book came out, 3 weeks ago or 5 years ago, you can continue to, when you go do your talk, make sure that you have copies available for signing, and anyone who hears your presentation has an opportunity to get the book.
Yeah. What do you think the average reader is like these days? Like who reads books?
I mean, I think that that's an interesting question. I think that there's different kind of categories of books that, as far as there's certain people who prefer to read things online. I do think that a lot of people still prefer like the print book.
Yeah.
I know that, when e-reader came out, I was all excited and I bought one, and it just sits there and I actually still read print books. There are, there's a lot more happening with ebooks. And so I think it depends, like, everyone's still reading. It's just, there's more formats now. And there are a lot of websites that have information, which makes it an even bigger challenge is, getting somebody to buy the book as opposed to going to a website to look for information about your topic. So it's kind of the availability of content online has kind of created an additional challenge for publishing.
Yeah, it's noisy out there. Very, very noisy out there. So let's talk about the purpose of your book. I think this is a really, when I go to write books and I think about them like as a project, like, and where is that project going to go? Like, what's my use for that? Do you want to talk about like the purpose of a book?
Sure. And based on like the genre, which we talked about earlier, it's really can be different based on, what the book's about. Like there's, how-to books, learning how to do things, children's books, fiction for entertainment. So based on what you're writing, like, you have a different purpose. You might be trying to entertain somebody. You might be trying to teach somebody how to do something new. Or if it's an educational book, it might be, professor using it in a course where they're teaching their students. So there's different purposes based on what kind of book it is.
Yeah. Christian's joining us. Hi, Christian. Do you want to be in the feed right now, or did you just want to wait till 8:30? Are you cool with being on? I just added you, and I'm like, whoops.
Sure, no, it's fine.
I'm like, hi. Waving.
I'm here. I'm ready.
That's funny. This is Christian Blonshine, everybody, and he'll be talking more about everything as well here as we go closer to the 8:30 mark. But I think that's a really good point. And Christian, chime in too to the conversation whenever you want to. But I think that's such a good point about like the purpose of the book. Like I hear people say, "Well, I want to be a New York Times best-selling author." I'm like, well, that's a really lofty goal. And I think, okay, so with my book, for me personally, I'm like, one person at a time, change a life, kind of thing. And I think about it differently rather than like but some people have really big dreams with their books. And some people are like, no, I just want to publish that so I have something to give to family, or a calling card, or it goes with my speech or whatever. So talk a little bit more about like the purpose of your book. Just to keep going a little bit.
And just a couple of things I thought of as you were talking. Like I've worked with authors who really like their main purpose for putting out a book was to get more business. So use it like as an expensive business card. So it might be something where you're really just trying to establish yourself as like a thought leader in your field. Or it could be something that, to your point, like where you're just wanting something more for like friends and family. I've heard a lot of people say their purpose is wanting to help other people, sharing their knowledge to help someone. So I think it really can vary based on what kind of book it is.
Yeah. And Christian, what do you want to hear for an author that would actually be included in a traditionally published mode? What one person at a time for my friends and family probably isn't like the marketing plan, correct?
Well,
or maybe.
I think you guys touched on a little bit. It's expectations, but that formula has worked.
Yeah.
If your expectation is to hit the New York Times list first week of the release, then no, it's not. But if you have the expectations that it's a marathon and not a sprint, well, you get that book in the hands of this person, and then that person shares it, and then there's a lot of luck involved, and then it gets shared with someone that maybe has influence somehow. Yeah. So, we did Chicken Soup, as a lot of people are aware of. That really came about from old-fashioned word of mouth. Books being put in untraditional places, gas stations and hair salons and things like that. And then finally the word of mouth starts kicking in. So no, I think one book here, one book there, over time, it can have an impact, but it takes a little time.
Yeah. I like the marathon plan. I love my book on airplanes. That is my favorite thing these days. Just tuck one in a pocket and you never know where that thing's going. I'm like, I write finders keepers in it. Hey, hi.
Lending libraries too. We have some authors who always drop them in those like little lending library books, boxes. That I drop our books in there periodically too. So
yeah, I love that, where it just finds its way. All right, Lindsey, I'm going to go back. I love this discussion about purposes of books and platforms and marketing and everything. If you guys have questions, make sure you type them on in too while we're talking. But here's one. What is a platform and how do I get one?
It would be great if we just buy a platform, but it has to be developed. So we talk in publishing a lot about like the author platform. So it's your platform, whether it's like online or through speaking and mailing lists, but kind of like your platform for getting the word out about your book. So as I talked about earlier in the night, it's easier for an author who's publishing a book to get sales when they have an established platform, because they already have, followers and, fans and people who know about their work. So they kind of have an automatic audience that can be brought in. So, I recommend for authors, whether you're self-publishing or traditionally publishing, that you work on your author platform, treat it as something you're constantly working on, and it evolves. I've seen authors have kind of a smaller following, and over time they built it up and got a lot more traction on it. And but it's really just kind of your network of who knows about your work, and there's so many opportunities to do that online now, like Elizabeth with Best Ever You.
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of creating your own hashtag. Because people know they can always click on your hashtag and see the latest and greatest of what's happening in that topic or that world or whatever. So, and then the use of hashtags in a bigger sense as well. So like I'll have like a hashtag HCI books, hashtag Best Ever You, hashtag Change Guidebook, but then I'll broaden that out to hashtag books, authors, self-help, personal development, the bigger hashtags that people might click on to kind of go for looking what they want. But that's part of platform development too, with using what the tools that are out there in the right way to get the best engagement. And that is something that I'm constantly learning. Something new comes up every day with learning social media. And I'll ask I'm in my almost mid 50s here. So I'll ask somebody much younger than I am, even one of our kids, somebody else's kids, whatever. And they're like, yeah, TikTok, and there you go on TikTok. I'm like actually on TikTok now. Granted, they're not the best videos or whatever, but I'm out there. And I have people that will write in, I just bought your book. And it's the coolest thing. And it might be one person who tells another, kind of like what Christian was saying. But the platform development, do you see one platform really selling books more than another? I know TikTok's super popular for fiction, getting more popular for nonfiction, but do you see one platform working better, or is it just up to the author to use the platform?
I think it's Book Talk, which is TikTok, as you mentioned, like for YA and for fiction, that seems to be like the best place right now. There's also a lot of opportunity on Instagram. There's Bookstagrammers, which are basically people who just take pictures of books and post them. And they're all fancy and stuff. And so I'd say those are kind of the two biggest things. But it really also just depends on your market. Like as you mentioned, like in nonfiction in particular, there's not as much opportunity on like Book Talk as there are for like young adult books.
Yeah, we're in the room. We're wiggling on in there.
So I think part of it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier in the night, that like part of it depends on what kind of book you have, and just making sure you're in the right places. So it's kind of hard to say this is the place to go. It varies based on what your book is.
What if I'm an author and I say, I don't like social media. I'm not on any of this stuff and I don't want to be.
So unfortunately, I hear that a lot as far as like social media is so time consuming, and it is, like, I 100% agree that it is. It's a big commitment. So my strategy, if you're not kind of fully committed to, being on social media, is looking at where your market is and maybe finding like one or two platforms that you can focus on. So as an example, if you were doing like something like, if you wanted to post like on Twitter, just like focus on your Twitter account and just kind of keep that going, as opposed to trying to stretch yourself thin with having all these different accounts and then not updating any of them. So I think if you don't if you're not really interested in social media, or you don't have the time, which is it is very time consuming, unfortunately. Just finding picking a platform that you think makes the most sense for your market. Like, where are your readers? Does it make the most sense for you to focus on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or
Goodreads? Goodreads is another one that somebody just mentioned. Goodreads is a good one. I don't know if that's kind of a social media platform in a way, right?
Yeah, we encourage authors to get reviews on Goodreads. I mean, you can be active on there. I don't know that I would spend a lot of energy. I would,
But yeah,
I would get your author profile polished,
noted.
which I know Elizabeth has. I would get your profile really polished and then try to, get people to review it on there. But as far as like updating it every day, I don't really know that that would be the place I would focus my energy on. But definitely it is a good place to get reviews and people noticing your book.
Yeah. What do you think about audio versus video? I know we're in a podcasting boom. So it feels like we're kind of like in a video boom. Is video killing the radio star again? It's a good place to play the music right now. But is video more popular than audio only right now, or are they equal, or do you know?
I guess I personally think that, and Christian would probably want to comment on this too. I personally think that video is more popular than audio only. That being said, I as I mentioned earlier in the evening, I set up all the author interviews for HCI, and lots of the authors are doing, podcasts, and a lot of them with a big following, and there are quite a few that are audio only.
Yeah.
So there are lots of audio only opportunities. But I do think as far as social media content, video is very, it's one of the better ways to attract readers and just people to your content.
Yeah. What do you think? Chris?
Yeah, I agree with that too, particularly for promotional and marketing purposes. We're a very visual society. A snippet that has visual attached to it is just more interesting than something that may not. So yeah, I agree with that. And I did also want to chime in on your question about like if you have someone that is opposed to social media. Lindsay's advice was spot on. Focus on something, because from my end, which is a little bit more of the sales and marketing, and we'll touch on this later, it boils down to discoverability. That is the biggest challenge to selling a book. I have some stats that we'll share later, just the number of books that are published every single year. It's how is your book going to get found from the smorgasbord of books that gets released every year. While it's time consuming, the simplest method is to build, a platform, a social media page, things of that nature, so that people can be made aware of your book.
Yeah.
So sorry, I just want to touch on that.
No, I love it. And I have had wonderful success lately as things have been going and going and going for a while now with Facebook ads. I have a verified page on Facebook, and I started just learning. So I'd take out a $5 ad and I'd put the Change Guide book on there and just do $5 and see if I could learn it without, spending too much money. And I have had the most wonderful success with engagement. Authentic, real, actual people engaging, saying, I love that book, or hi, how are you? Whatever it is, did you see this picture of my dog? Yeah, cute, whatever engagement it is with Facebook ads. Just wonderful. I did one just the other day for something and spent $50 for the ad total. I controlled it with just $50 out the door. And, it got like 4,000 likes and 80 shares and all this stuff. So it's just some of the simpler things. And you can do that on Instagram. I don't know if you can take an ad out on LinkedIn. I haven't seen that. But you can take little simple ads out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for, $5. And that starts to do that. All it takes is like one person to share it or whatever. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I think that advertising on social media is a really good idea. And I think that like what your strategy is, like kind of just testing it, like seeing, try a platform, just spend minimal budget and just see, what kind of engagement you get. And then you can decide whether you want to continue or not. But I do think that a lot of the social media platforms are set up where you can't really see all the content unless you do the ads. So
Yeah.
you're going to just kind of pick and choose which posts to advertise as opposed to just doing them all.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing too. And it grew my platform over there it got verified. It was verified a few years ago, but it was verified at like 9,000 people. And now there's almost 16,000 people. And that's a pretty big growth for not, for pretty organic. It's anybody who knows me knows I'm very organic growing. So that can be a little bit slower, but it means that each person I come across, I'm going to take care of them and build that trust and so forth, so that people know when they come into our content that it's a trusted place and space. It's not spammy and so forth. And that to me is probably the most important thing. That trust factor online is important to me. So, okay, here's another one. I got a lot of questions. You ready for more?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Doesn't the publisher just do all the marketing for me and make sure the book and I are just a smashing success?
So, I think
Go
that's
on the red carpet, right?
I think that is a common misconception for, new authors, like not realizing how much effort they need to also put into, making the book a success. And depending on your publisher, I know there's publishers that, put a lot of resources into books and others that just don't really do much at all. But, at HCI, we collaborate with our authors a lot, as Elizabeth can attest to. And so there's certain things that I'll do, we'll do as the publisher. But there's also a lot of things that Elizabeth's doing. As we mentioned, she keeps herself very busy. So she's, working hard also to make the book a success. So it really is, it's not just the publisher, the author is really like driving the ship of trying to get the book sales. And what we were talking about before as far as having like the platform, finding if you do like public speaking, you want to work the book into like all of your speaking engagements and push book sales. Or if you're somebody like Elizabeth that has a large social media following, finding like creative ways to incorporate the book into your content where it doesn't seem spammy, that you're just posting the same thing every day. But a lot of it does fall on the author, where I know a lot of authors probably originally when they're setting up with a publisher would think it's all the publisher making it a success.
Yeah. And don't you think that's true for all levels? But like if I'm super uber famous, I'm still going to have some work involved.
Yeah, no, and to your point, like you would still be doing like appearances and media and the same thing, like even if it's somebody else managing your social media account, there would still be that promotion going. So there's always the work of the author getting the word out about the book. And if you're self-publishing, you're doing all of that on yourself, as well, without even the publisher's resources.
Yeah, I had a day off the other day. And you know why? It's because somebody relatively pretty famous held up the book. I was like, oh, I can relax today. I was like, and then I was like, no, I can't. I gotta show that they held up the book.
That's true. You have to show that off.
So, but it was pretty cool to have Wayne Scott Lucas and Kara Young and people hold up the book, and they discovered it organically, and it was like, oh, that's so cool at the moment for the book, and I just think it's cool when things like that happen. And so sometimes there's still work involved, but sometimes the marketing kind of goes a little bit on its own.
Mm-hmm.
So the momentum kicks in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On certain days anyway. I thought that was pretty fun. But yeah, there's work involved and a marketing plan. And don't you think that's no matter the genre? Somebody just typed in, you never stop doing the work. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think that's no matter what kind of book it is?
Yeah, no, I mean, kind of going back to my examples of the different types of books, I think if you're publishing like a textbook or more of like a reference book, you might not be doing as much. I guess a reference book, you might be doing some marketing, but like textbooks, they usually have like sales reps that are on campus pushing the book to professors. But any type of like trade book or children's book, you definitely want to have like a marketing plan in place, and figure out kind of your plan before you publish the book, and keep pushing it, even if it's after it's out, as long as the content's evergreen.
Yeah, I agree. All right. What does it mean to be an Amazon bestseller? Love that question. It's kind of fun. I'm a best-selling author. I'm an Amazon best-selling author, whatever it is. People love to use those words, award-winning and best-selling and so forth. What's it really mean to be an Amazon best-selling author?
Sure. So I'll talk about that a little bit, and then I'm sure Christian will probably want to chime in as well. But on Amazon, they have, different categories that your book will be in. So as an example, a book like the Change Guidebook would probably find itself in like self-help or, change, or I'm not sure what your third category is. But you can become like a bestseller in these different categories. And basically it's, people purchasing the book, page views, and it's all like time driven. So like if you have a big media hit and, 50 people buy your book, like your ranking on Amazon's going to go higher and higher. And then you could become like an Amazon bestseller, either in a category. And they also have things like lists like movers and shakers. There's like just like an overall ranking list. So there's all different ways you can kind of become like an Amazon bestseller. But there's like an algorithm the site uses based on page views and sales.
Yeah. Do you you're mixed up with everybody though in that? So like if Michelle Obama puts out a book and you do it at the same time, everybody's in the same pool of books together, correct?
So I guess with the categories, like, if you had a book, you wouldn't potentially be in the same category as Michelle Obama, or, based on what your book's content is. Like, as an example, like a cookbook wouldn't find itself in the same category likely as the Change Guidebook. But you could be, and Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, there's more like just like overall Amazon rankings. So like you could be a cookbook on the same like list as Michelle Obama's book. And
that's correct. I mean, so there's the category rankings, which you're not in with everybody. You're in with other people within that same category. The really important ranking is the overall ranking. And that is, yes, you are, you're in there with the Michelle Obamas and anybody else that's out at that moment, or really in time. The thing that I find interesting in what I do with Amazon is how many other businesses and other entities pay attention to Amazon. And it's really true. Amazon rankings are a barometer of people's interest in a book, right? So like some of what we do is we'll sell to publishers internationally, and I'll get contacted from time to time from a publisher in Greece, for example, and they'll be like, "Hey, I saw this book hit 500 on the, can you tell me a little bit about it?" They're watching. I've had another account that is a retail account here in the US who is considering bringing a book in, said if the ranking stays at X for 2 more weeks on Amazon, we'll bring it in. So that I always found super interesting. And Lindsey did clarify this, the one thing that, for prospective authors that are here that I want to make clear is it doesn't necessarily mean you're selling your book. Yeah. That's the one thing, and not to be negative about it. It means that people are visiting the page, they're clicking on it. It's a big mystery of how the ranking is calculated. I wish I had the answer, but it is, as Lindsey said, it's some formula of sales and page views and clicks within a certain time period. So
good to know.
Yeah.
And just to add about the categories. So like a lot of times when a new book will come out, you'll see like a flag at the top of the page that says like #1 new release in self-help, or those are kinds of things that like an author can then post on social media. Yeah, exactly. Screenshot. And then that's kind of like a you can then say like, oh, I'm the number one. I was the number one book in the cooking category, or whatever category it might be.
Keeping that tag there is a different story. The tag appears and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, where'd that go? A screenshot, So keeping that tag there is involves going back to your platform or whatever and saying, hey, let's direct sales to Amazon and so forth, or whatever it is, to get me back up in the rankings or whatever. If you know people, you can be that blunt. But most of the time it's not that blunt, is it? It's more of a softer marketing rather than, hey, go buy my book so I can have my Amazon ranking go up. People don't say that. Unless it's family. Right? Or do we? I don't know. Okay, so anything else on Amazon?
I just wanted to add, so like if you're, they have Amazon Author Central, which is a program that authors can sign up for. And through that, you can make a profile on your Amazon page, kind of similar to the Goodreads profile I was mentioning, where you can just, like Elizabeth has one, where it's just, your author photo, you can add video, and just makes it look a little bit more like personal and polished. And they also have other tools. I'm told, I don't personally have one since I'm not an author, but I'm told by other authors we work with that they do have some like sales reporting and other tools that you can use as an author for your Amazon page.
Okay, good. All right. Can you guys tell if a book is going to be successful as it's being published and marketed, like right off the bat?
Sometimes you can tell in advance. So as a publisher, we do get reporting in advance of a book's publication. So we'll see pre-orders. So, and then oftentimes, and again, here's a case of Amazon sort of driving the rest of the retail ship. If we have a title that's getting a ton of pre-orders, a ton of traffic, we can use that information with other accounts that may or may not be considering bringing the book in. Again, as a barometer of consumer interest, you should bring this book in too. So yeah, I think you can. It's not a guarantee for certain, but oftentimes we can see what interest is like leading up to a book's release, and then thereafter. But again, with a little bit of luck and the book falling in someone's right hands, just because it's off to a slow start doesn't mean it won't pick up later as well.
You guys might hear puppies in the background. I have dogs in the background. Everybody there, it's time for them to go on their walk, so you might hear them bumping around in the background. I'm not sure if you can hear it or not. Yeah, that's a really good. That's really helpful too. Lindsey, why? I think we answered this already, but I just want to kind of go back to authors marketing their books. Does it mean that I need to be able to talk about my book, like to become a speaker in the nonfiction world? I don't know about fiction, but nonfiction, does it mean I actually have to become a public speaker, do a course, all these things that go with the book?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things. Well, first, like to what you were saying, like I think it depends on your genre. Like just going back to like, a fiction author, I don't necessarily think has to be doing public speaking. But if you're doing like nonfiction on like a topic where it's, it lends itself to like a course or speaking engagements. That's a really good way to push books. That being said, I know that not all authors do that. Like some just aren't comfortable with like public speaking and they still have books, and just that happens. But I think it depends. Like if you're a children's book author, you'd probably be wanting to set up like school visits. But then there are, I'm sure, also like children's book authors that don't do that. So I think part of it's like your comfort level, and if you are comfortable with it, it's a good way to get the word out and to push bulk sales.
Yeah. All right. We've got a couple more questions for you, and we'll switch over to Christian. What's a PR firm? And do I need to hire one, and how much do they cost in general? We don't have to like, is that something you have to do, is hire a PR firm and for any kind of book?
And same thing, going back to the fact that there's different types of books. Like it wouldn't make sense to hire a PR firm for like a reference book or a textbook. A lot of children's book authors do hire them, or a fiction or nonfiction author might hire one as well. And it really comes down to budget, because unfortunately it is pretty expensive. So, I think it's a budget consideration and your commitment to the project, and also what resources you do get from your publisher. So a lot of, like HCI, they have me on staff, so I'm helping authors. I know there's other publishers that don't have publicity, so they're kind of, authors are on their own, and then some publishing companies have like a whole huge team. So it really depends on kind of what resources you have. But generally speaking, a PR firm is, a professional publicist who specializes in, you would want to find somebody specializes in your kind of book, and they would help you get like reviews and media coverage. And I've seen a decent amount of authors that do hire a PR firm. Usually they have some kind of like other business where they're also kind of developing their platform as, a doctor or a health and wellness coach, or so like there's kind of more, it's not just the book that they're publicizing, they're also publicizing them in their business. Or so I've seen a lot of that as far as hiring a PR firm, but it really depends. There's plenty of authors that don't hire one because it is unfortunately pretty expensive. It would vary. It could cost a couple of $1,000s a month to, $20,000 a month. So I think
I saw one. I'm like, I have 4 kids in college at once. I don't know about that. There's some that are really, really expensive.
Yeah, and it is the kind of thing where you can't really just hire them for like a month. You need to hire them for like a couple of months because they need to be able to develop the press materials and then plan all, kind of do the pitching and follow up. And then it takes a while for the media interviews to come in. So it's not the kind of thing where you can just hire them for a month, unfortunately, and get everything generated. So it is a couple month commitment if you're thinking about doing it. But like lots of authors don't hire one just because of the cost.
I saw as I was launching the Change Guidebook, I was working with a PR firm that works with Best Ever You, and I was asking them, they're like, you're too late. Actually, we would have needed this information like 6 months ago. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So sometimes there's a window that they want to have before the book comes out to work with you, so that they're launching with you. But that's not to say that your book can't get published and then hire a PR firm after to keep the PR alive, correct?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think it depends on the PR firm, because I have talked to PR firms that, as you described, like they require like a 6-month block, and they maybe want you to have like a couple of months beforehand. I've also talked to some that will take you on a month beforehand. And I've also worked with authors that have hired a PR firm, to your point, like a year after the project's already been out and you just want to keep it going, or they are also promoting their business, or another part of what they do, where they see it as beneficial to both, and it kind of justifies the expense.
You got a question. What's the best way to secure reviews?
So I guess that's a good question. So the traditional reviews, which are like the Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, and Book Page, Kirkus, they all have a window, which kind of what Elizabeth was saying, where there's like a cutoff for when you can submit to be considered for review. And it's around 3 months. Kirkus is longer; it's 4 to 5 months. But in general, the others are about 3 months, but it might be off a little bit. Traditionally published authors, usually through the publisher, get their books submitted to those different places to be considered. Unfortunately, as Elizabeth mentioned a couple of times during the program, there's so many books that come out. So not all of the books get picked up, but everybody can submit their books to be considered. I don't really, self-published authors can, I believe they can purchase a Kirkus review. And I believe there's also Publishers Weekly has something called Book Life, which is specific for self-published authors trying to get review coverage. And the reviews appear, it's a paid opportunity, but the reviews appear in Publishers Weekly, the printed edition, but just as a separate section devoted to self-published authors. And then, so, if you're working with the publisher would would be submitting the book for you to these publications, but it would be done way in advance of it actually being available.
Yeah. And for self-published authors, what do you think a good avenue to get reviews is? And beyond maybe Publishers Weekly or Book Life and Kirkus and some of the other ones, is it just asking friends and family to go onto Amazon and Goodreads and post?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely get like more like the consumer reviews. Self-published authors, I would recommend looking online and trying to find like websites, like places that don't have like defined, it has to be coming from a traditional publisher. But like you can get reviewed. I've seen book reviews in like I know I used the gluten-free and celiac example from a cookbook earlier. Like there was, I believe I had like a book review in like a gluten-free intolerance groups newsletter. So there's other kinds of opportunities like that, and where it wouldn't matter if you're traditionally published or self-published.
Yeah.
So I would just look for other avenues, but those trades like the Publishers Weekly, the Library Journal, in general, it's more the traditionally published books, and it's all done by the publisher.
Yeah. What do you think about comparing and despairing? And then we're going to move over to Christian. And here's what I mean. I'm just going to use a really, really personal example. It's from my heart to everybody. Sometimes I'll go onto Amazon and I'll be like, I have 91 reviews and that person has 7,123,000. I'm just sitting there like, oh, and you feel your heart kind of sinks. Like, how do I go from A to Z from 91 to 7,100? I'll be like, then I'll look a little closer. I'm like, okay, that book's been out for like 12 years. So we're going to give ourselves a little heartbreak here and a head break and a big hug and all this stuff. But we feel that way as authors, don't we, Jennifer Vaughn and others listening? We feel sometimes like we are not successful. And do you have any advice for that? Because it's a huge part of the marketing and PR, and we're trying so hard. And you're like, oh, I just need to like crack this code. What is it? Do you have any advice there?
Yeah, I guess my advice would be just not to give up. Like it's going to be really hard, but just like keep going. And as we talked about a lot on the call, like once the book's out, like as long as your topic's evergreen, like continuing to work on it, over time. Because to your what you were saying about the reviews and how somebody might have tons and tons of reviews, but maybe the book's been out for 15 years, as opposed to your book that's been out for 6 months. So, just kind of like seeing it as like a longer term project, and, continuing to develop, and then, developing the platform, like continuing to develop your author platform, and, organically you can get more sales that way too. Like if your coaching business takes off and you have, that kind of thing, or if you all of a sudden have way more Instagram followers, it's going to organically lend itself for a promotional platform.
That's a really good point. That's kind of exactly what's happened to me with the Change Guidebook. My coaching business soared. It's like, whoa, where is that coming from? And it's like, that's coming from the book. So it's a really interesting thing that happens. It sometimes can be something that is not what you've planned for or what you've expected, and it just happens. And it can be even better than what you thought was going to happen. So it's a very cool process. I love your never. I have a thing in front of me. It says never, ever, ever give up, ever, never, ever. It's right in front of me all the time. And along with remember your value from Sophia Nelson. But yeah, the huge point there, because like just as you give up, you never know what's going to happen next. So, and I know a lot of you out there are tired also because you've got like a full-time job, something else happening in the background, and then you've got this book project going on, and you feel like you want to dedicate all your energy to this book, but you've got a full-time job and have bills to pay and responsibilities and all this stuff. What do you say to that, where you've got multiple things going on and a book?
I guess
no,
I mean, it's a really good point. I mean, I would try to carve out time. Then if you have a full-time job, maybe you can find like devote your Sunday, or find like a couple, like break it down into more manageable things where it's like, okay, this week I'm going to work on sending out books to reviewers, or next week I'm going to work on outreach to organizations or that kind of thing. So kind of like breaking it into smaller projects and then just maybe allotting like 1 day a week to work on it, or like maybe like 2 nights a week, or, just kind of, or maybe you really, you're a morning person and you want to have your coffee and spend a couple hours every morning writing, or just make like a schedule where you're, you feel like you're working towards your goals, but you can still obviously maintain your responsibilities.
All right. Any questions for Lindsey? Any last, type them on in. Lindsey, anything we missed?
No, thank you for having me. It was great having the conversation with you.
No, it was so fun having you. Are you going to stick around?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, stick around. That'd be awesome. Okay, we're going to move over to Christian. Christian, I'm going to read this about you.
Okay.
Christian, just a little side note. Christian, the very first time I emailed Christian, I spelled his name wrong. Thank you for forgiving me. Like,
Well, what happens often, and you spoke to her earlier, is Christine B. There's Christian B. We often get each other's emails, so
Yeah.
it's
I don't think I full on called you Christina, but
happens often.
I was like, oh crap, I just did that. Yeah, anyway, but thank you for being forgiving and having a good sense of humor, because I'm like, not cool. Okay, so Christian has been in the publishing industry for over 15 years. I'm just going to full on read this. Having started in, I can never say this word right, subsidiary rights management, and working his way up to his current position as vice president. You oversee day-to-day operations at HCI, including acquisitions, sales and marketing, and management. And you live in South Carolina with your wife and 3 sons. I don't know. You have sons. I thought you had girls in there.
No, and so you apologized for your dogs a minute ago. I had to mute myself and apologize for my 14-year-old who barged in on me.
Oh, good. Yeah.
No, 3 boys.
14, okay.
14, 11, and 8. So
yeah. Oh, good luck on the college.
Yeah.
21, 23, 25, and 27 right now. And one of them just finished today with his master's degree.
Wow.
And it's like amazing. So that's 2 done now. It's like,
congratulations.
all right. Yeah, big, huge cheers in this house today. So, all right, here we go. The business of books. We've talked a lot about the business of books already, but we got more to learn. And there's always something to learn in the publishing industry. What would you like to start out with? What is the book business, Christian?
Well, I think broadly, the book business is creating content, selling it at a commercial level. What we do, we sell it internationally. But on a more granular level, there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes. Maybe some of the people here know this, maybe not, but there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes than just developing a book, printing it, and sending it out to the accounts. We live in a very digital environment. We sell in a very digital environment. So in addition to the editorial development of the book, the printing, the manufacturing, there's metadata management. That's how your book is actually put out there for sale on Amazon, on all the other retailers, both online and in store. It's all done digitally nowadays. So there's work that goes behind the scenes with that. Yeah. Lately, printing's been a nightmare as far as working that in. So there's a lot that really goes on behind the scenes with book business. Accounting, there's a little tidbit that maybe people know, maybe don't. It's the worst word in publishing sales: returns. Oh, yeah. One thing I learned that was a shock to me coming into the business: if we sell a book to Amazon, if we sell a book to Barnes & Noble or somewhere, and that book doesn't sell to the consumer, guess what? They send it back to us. So there's a whole lot of accounting involved, reconciling outgoing sales versus the incoming returns. So yeah, there's the book business is a lot more than just someone writing a book, printing it, and then sending it out for sale.
Yeah. Is there a really big difference in the business of books between like self-publishing, hybrid publishing, and traditionally published? And can you explain to our listeners and viewers what each of those things really actually is?
Sure. So I think the biggest difference between traditional publishing and self-publishing boils down to a couple things. First, is responsibility. Second is money or royalties. And what I mean by that is, in a traditional publishing, the responsibility, and someone typed this question in, the responsibility does lie more on the publisher. We do pay for most of the marketing. We do pay for the production. We do pay for all that. As such, we pay, a smaller royalty and keep the larger share of the royalty. In a self-publishing arrangement, though, all those responsibilities are on the author. So they pay for the manufacturing, they pay for the marketing, but they take a larger share of the royalty. The overall outcome of each, though, can vary based on who you're self-publishing with. There's a couple main, the biggest self-publishers are Amazon and Ingram Spark. Ingram Spark is a more quote unquote traditional self-publishing outlet versus Amazon, who is a straight sole self-publishing only. You only sell on Amazon. That's the only place you can get the book. Whereas with Ingram, traditional accounts like Barnes and Noble, other accounts, they can get the book. It's a little harder to because of how the network works, but they can get the books into those accounts. And that's one service that I think that we really can do as a traditional publisher that is harder for a self-publisher, is get distribution in accounts other than Amazon. Additionally, I think traditional publishing offers your favorite word, subsidiary options, which means, the most common one, alternative formats, audio, foreign translations, foreign English. There are a lot of English-speaking nations, India, Australia, where we'll license books to be published with publishers in those countries. We export as well. I don't think export is really an option with self-publishing. That's an expensive undertaking, which is why sometimes we license and then they print and sell there. So, I think there's a lot more that can be done with traditional publishing than with self-publishing, but it does boil back to, the risk reward as far as how much do you want to undertake as the author versus how much money you have to spend to do it and how much money you expect to make in doing it, if that all makes sense.
Yeah, a book can be like owning like a racehorse in a way. I always think of that.
Sure. And then making it, and mentioning one other thing too, there's also hybrid publishing companies out there that are essentially, again, not being a self-publisher, I'm going off what I hear. They're basically self-publishers with a la carte type services, meaning you can pay for editorial support or you can pay for marketing support that the publisher does instead of either you doing it yourself or paying someone, so they're involved, but you're still paying for it.
Yeah, so you're not totally on your own in that way. You're kind of got a little bit of both. Okay.
Yeah.
Which might be a good option for people sometimes. I don't know.
Sure.
Just depends. It depends on your skill set, I guess, because we talked earlier, there's so much involved with putting together books. You actually have a question here. For acquisition purposes, Christian, what are you looking for right now? Anything in particular that you'd love to work with?
So, specifically for HCI, our company motto is we're a life issues publisher. So we look for books that can help people somehow, some way. And I think we'll probably touch on this a little bit, and I touched on it earlier. The biggest challenge that we are faced with is discoverability, is the platform, that there is so much out there, not even just in book form. You got to remember, we're competing with the internet as a nonfiction publisher. So, we're looking for content that can help someone, but then we're looking for people, authors that have means of getting that message out there as well, like Elizabeth does. Like Elizabeth is a publisher's dream. Like she is still hustling now, a year or whatever we are past the book's release date. So, content is always going to be important, but you also need people that are, and you guys touched on this in the marketing, the authors that are willing to also roll up their sleeves and utilize whatever they can to leverage and just visibility for the book.
Yeah, because I think one of my big goals was like, I don't want to just write one more book. I want to do another one, and I'm like, I was really big in my heart. Like, I really want this to be successful, because I think when you find a crew like you guys, you feel so blessed instead of stressed. Just like, oh, there's a team that's got me. And it's the coolest feeling in the world. I feel so blessed to have. Every day I tell my husband, I'm like, I'm so blessed to have them. I can't even tell you. My dream since I was a little kid in kindergarten was to write books, and like, I actually get to do this. It's the coolest thing in the world. So I always say, don't give up on your dreams and do the hustle, but you got to do the work, don't you? There is work involved. You cannot sit around in anything and just wish for it and want to be like somebody else and, oh, look at them. And you got to really put in the work.
Most definitely.
Yeah, you guys are working hard to help us be successful. So it's amazing. Jennifer, did that answer your question? And if it didn't, just type more in. Okay. What are the latest developments in the book business?
So, I think something that all publishers are dealing with, and actually just probably all businesses for that matter, and all individuals, is we are recovering from the pandemic, both good and bad. So from our end, there actually was some good that came out of it. 2020, beginning of 2020, sales were slow when everything was shutting down, and there was a point in time where Amazon actually even just stopped buying books. They were prioritizing medical supplies, essentials, things of that nature. But once that cleared out, people were buying books because they were staying home, and that really ramped up in 2021. When people were still having to stay home, they were buying books. They were buying books because they were doing projects at home. They were reading books because they had nothing else to do. So that part was great. Conversely, and a lot of companies are having a lot of issues came out of the pandemic. There's a paper shortage going on right now. So when we're printing books now, it's challenging. We have to print far out in advance, schedule it far out in advance, which makes planning on our end difficult, because we may not know exactly, yet how a book is trending. Labor shortages are still an issue. And then in 2022, I think as the world has really opened back up, sales have decreased a little bit, and that is across the board. That is not just with HCI. So, the latest, and again, this is likely for everyone. We're still dealing with this with the pandemic, but in a lot of ways, I think it's good. It's taught us to be adaptable, and so we're going through with it as best we can.
Yep. Is there a format that's more popular than another? Like, is ebook more popular than audiobook, which is more popular than a printed book, or is it all equal, or are you seeing any kind of trends there?
Sure. No, I mean, so print still is king.
Yeah.
There have been waves, and there is currently a wave. There was a point in time when ebooks first came out that everyone was saying ebooks are going to take over. There will be no more printed books, but that subsided. And I mean, and ebooks are popular, and there are a lot of people that swear by ebooks, but print still rules.
Yeah.
Audio is currently the hot trend. Audio has really exploded, but it's still, it's still print. What is fun and interesting is some of the technology that is out there now, predominantly with Amazon, who now owns Audible. But you can take an audiobook, for example, and if you own the ebook, you can be, sitting on a train reading your audiobook, and then get in your car and pick up where you left off in the ebook with the audiobook. So there's really just some neat technology that's out there right now. But I think people still like the feel of a printed book. I don't know, maybe when my 8-year-old becomes an adult and he's been doing tablets at school, that may change, but for now, print's still king.
Is it is paperback more popular than hardback, or hardback more like explain the difference between having a paperback book and a hardcover.
Sure.
Um,
So for us, most of what we do is paperback. We want our books to, and one of the main reasons behind that is cost. A hardback book costs more to produce, therefore it's going to cost more to retail. And we want our books to be accessible to people. We don't want it to be something where people have to think about if they can really afford this book. We want them to be just, I want that book. Cost shouldn't be a factor. Typically, you do see hardbacks in certain genres. Celebrity memoirs, often hardback, and then you'll see them come out with a paperback, as a second cycle. Cookbooks are often hardbacks, just durability in terms of, doing recipes in the kitchen. You want to stand it upright, and same with children's books, durability. So there are some factors involved in the format you choose, but more or less as a general rule, paperback is more popular in general nonfiction, and I think as a result of that is the most popular format.
Can you elaborate on audiobook a little bit? That was probably some of the most fun I've ever had recording an audiobook. What a blast. Not everybody gets to do that though, right? Like it's kind of what I heard was it was pretty cool to be an author and be able to do your own audiobook.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, audiobooks being made is a growing percentage of the books that we publish, being made into audio is pretty high. But the author being able to do the read is not a given. It's hard, as you can probably attest to. You're sitting in a room for 15 hours, 20 hours, whatever it boils down to. You have these high-powered microphones that hear every sound your body may make, or anything like that.
You have to stop your stomach growls. It's like, wait, what? You can hear that?
But how we do it is we work with companies, and for every minute that you're in that studio, it costs money. So if they don't feel that they can be as efficient as possible in that process, that's why they tend to use professional narrators who that is their job. They can do it. They can do it quickly, and therefore save a little bit of money. They know it's going to sound good. But oftentimes it boils down to the decision of, can this book be read by anyone and be enjoyed at the same level, or does it need to come from that person's voice?
Yeah. Good point. All right. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Why do some books, I think we covered this, but I'm just going to keep with the questions people have asked. Why do some books sell easily and others don't?
I wish I had that answer. If we had that answer, they'd all sell. I'm going to use this phrase. I've already used it probably 3 or 4 times. It's discoverability. This stat is unverified. I saw it on a couple different sites though, so it's a ballpark. In 2021, there were 2 million new ISBNs, meaning book titles that came out. So if every year, if 2 million books are coming out, it's a lot of books.
Wow.
So how does someone come to an Amazon, come to a Barnes and Noble, and find that book? So that's it boils down to, how do you do that?
More work to do.
and that does, and I didn't chime in, but that does boil down to social media. I mean, not that it's a guarantee, but it is an option. It boils down to your question about speaking. No, it's not mandatory, but if you can do it, you should, just because that's another option. You never know who is listening. It also harkens back to what I told you about the one by one, but you never know who might ultimately see that post, hear that talk, and therefore share the word.
Yep, totally agree. How do you decide to take on an author in a book?
Yeah, and we did touch on that too. 2 things. Content is still king. Unfortunately, there are some books out there that probably sell with bad content, celebrity books, things like that. But, you know, my experience is we've never sold a bad book.
Yeah.
And then platform discoverability, you know, what does the author offer in addition to what we can try and do that can help sell the book?
Okay. How important is it to think outside the box in the book industry? I know you're outside the box thinker. I've come to you with different things and you're like, yeah, and we figure it out and stuff, but that's cool.
Well, I think with any business, you have to think outside the box, but one of the unfortunate things with the book business is outside of Amazon, the places where you can sell books are shrinking. You know, 15, 20 years ago, there was Barnes & Noble, there was Borders, there was Books A Million, there was Walden Books. There was a lot more bookstore outlets. Nowadays, there's Barnes & Noble and there's Books A Million, but even Books A Million is a shell of what they once were in terms of number of stores. And there are indies. I mean, and the good news of the last year or two is actually more indies have opened up. And there are some distribution means now that assist with independent bookstores that can make them competitive with, say, Amazon, things like that. So,
yeah, I've had a blast locally. Locally with Lindsay, chime in about Sherman's. I mean, that has been fun, hasn't it?
Yes, yeah. Elizabeth's had a Sherman's coastal Maine bookstore, like a tour. Basically, they're having her at every location.
It's been so much fun.
Yeah, that would be a piece of advice that I would give to any prospective author out there, is to get to know the bookstores in your town, whether they are indies, because indies often have cult followings. But even if it's a big store like Barnes & Noble, Barnes & Noble was sold within the last 3 years, and the new ownership group has changed how they buy books, and they put more of an onus of the book buying used to happen via New York, via corporate. But they've changed their philosophy, and they're making store managers, giving them a lot more say in the books that they're carrying in that store, which, if you think about it, makes a whole lot of sense. A bookstore in Maine, for example, in winter is probably not going to carry a book about beaches and things that, you know, a Barnes & Noble in Key West in December might carry. You know, there's a lot, you know, different preferences and different things like that. So it makes a lot of sense, but make friends with the bookstores, because they can have some influence.
Yeah, that's been so much fun. Yeah, thank you Lindsay, for helping.
And it's great too, because now, you know, Elizabeth's new book is coming out. I can't remember if you said it was coming out next year or the year after, but, you know, we can go back to them, and, you know, they already know her. We can kind of reinvent the tour with the new book, that kind of thing. You have more possibilities once you develop these relationships.
My job used to be when I was a kid, I was a Walmart door greeter. I mean, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? For author college. And it kind of reminds me of that. Sometimes they put me right by the door and I'm like, hey, I've been asked some of the most interesting questions. Do you carry this? I'm like, you know, and you go, and so it's a little bit of customer service / book signing, but it's a lot of fun. You get to know people, and you know the staff, and you keep in touch and all that stuff, but it's pretty fun. So I think that's great advice, Christian, to get to know your local bookstore, because it's great fun. All right, we've got a couple more minutes. Christian, can you stay a little bit longer? Or?
Yeah, I was late, so I'm here as long as you need me.
Good with that. If you type in questions, if you need to go or whatever, we'll ask them, and you can listen to the replay. When you print a book, the author sort of gasps, like, how many are you printing, and what do we got to sell? And, you know, there's this process of, you know, how well you think the book's going to do. What do you usually print? And, like, what does that mean exactly when you say you're going to print this many? Where do they go? You know, that kind of thing.
So there's a lot of factors that are involved in that, and a lot of it is speculative. You know, it's not an exact science, but you You look at, that Amazon pre-sale number. You see, and we have some like barometers that we can kind of like look 1 month out, 2 months out, or a week out, and what's good, what's not good.
Yeah.
Then you look at marketing plans, what the author has planned, and what, I've not been in the business, but we've been in this business for 45 years, I believe. So we have a decent sense of what moves the needle, what doesn't move the needle, though there are things that used to move the needle that don't, and vice versa. So there's always surprises out there, but you make an estimate based off, and taking it one step further, the sales process starts, and you touched on this earlier with PR. The sales process starts 6 months out in advance of a book. So we start getting information from our accounts as to how they think the book's going to perform in their stores. So we'll get estimates from them as well. That's the key thing that we look at is the estimates from them. We see what those come in at. We see what the pre-sales are. We see what the marketing plan is. If the author has written a book before, we look at history of that, and then we make a best guess. We print a number that can fill all of those accounts, and store estimates usually include 2 months worth of projected inventory, and then we'll print extra to keep inventory beyond that, usually in the amount of whatever it would take to turn books around.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. And right now the average turnaround time for printing books is about 3 months.
wow.
And that really that's traditional offset printing. So 1,000 books to and up takes 3 months. There's print on demand, which is smaller quantities, which you can turn around faster, but it's more expensive.
So do you take the books from the inventory and supply them to Amazon, or is Amazon printing on demand, or how?
No.
Okay.
So we print the books, so we pay for the printings. We hold them in our warehouse. We get orders from Amazon, from Barnes & Noble. We ship to them. They hold them. They have agreements with us of when they pay for those, but then if they don't sell, they send them back and the credits get issued. So that's where that accounting comes in.
Okay.
But so we own the inventory until we ship it to them, and then they own the inventory, but they can return the inventory.
Got it. Okay. Did not know that.
Yeah, that's
That doesn't seem
the worst word in publishing.
Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily mean the inventory's in the store either, right? Could it be does it mean it could be in there? Like you couldn't go into the store and like sign all the books so they can't return them or something like that.
Correct. So, well, it depends on the account.
Yeah.
So like Barnes & Noble has a distribution center. We have distributors that sell to independent bookstores. So, those books can, just be, there's definitely would be a point in time where those books would be sitting in yet another warehouse.
Got it. All right. Is there talk about a book that's flying off the shelves right now? And if you can.
Oh, you want me to
Yeah.
list a specific book?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's fun to. Can you, or you don't have to? You can take a pass on that. It's kind of fun.
I
to
mean,
talk about
flying
authors.
off the shelf may be a strong word. We have a book called Anxiety Audit out right now that's doing quite well. Actually, Oprah Daily just did a little excerpt
Awesome.
that went live. Was that yesterday, Lindsay, or the day before? Yeah, yesterday. And I mean, obviously, anxiety is such a pressing issue at the moment. So it's doing very well for us. So that's one that's to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Any other ones? I love talking about other authors and books that you guys have published and things like that. So
Sophia's books, I know you know Sophia, they continue to do well. And again, she has that platform. It'd be awesome if we all could, be a media pundit or someone that's in the news often, and you can get that little piece on TV where your book cover gets shown up from time to time. But her books continue to do well for us.
You just typed in as you were talking. I was just looking at that for my daughter, the anxiety audit book. So yeah.
Well, so I didn't know this was turning into a selling opportunity, but she has another book that is specific for kids. It's called Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents. So that might be one to check out too. Going back to something you said though, or we talked about though, that's a case, her first book, Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents, she was a first-time author. She co-wrote it with someone who had written books before, but she was out there speaking, and the book just gained traction, and like she continued to build her platform. And I think it's a two-way street, like Lindsey touched on. You can use the book to gain opportunities, whether it be speaking or otherwise, but then use those speaking or other opportunities to promote the book. So, and it's a marathon. The other, the book I think came out in, I want to say 2014, the first one, Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents, but it still sells as much this year as it did that year. And just every year it's consistency. And those are the books as a publisher I would much rather have.
Yeah. Well,
most books.
More.
What's that?
She just typed in, I'm buying those. So I just sold a few more. Good job.
Awesome.
We sold before Christian got here. We sold a memoir earlier too. What was it called? Get Wasted.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm going to leave them. My job's done. I've sold 3 books.
That's awesome. No, seriously. Yeah. She wrote, she has major anxiety, allergies. She said you just bought them both. So that's awesome. To the user typing in, is that food allergies? Because I may have life-threatening food allergies. So yeah, I'll look at those too, because I always have anxiety with food allergies. So I'll look at both the books too. You might have sold 4 by the night's end. Anyway, all right. Okay, let's go, just a couple more questions. What is success with a book really? Is it 1,000 copies sold? Is it a smile on her face? Is it a smile on the reader's face? Is it 10,000 copies? Is it flying off? What is like author success?
So I think that starts with your expectations. And I'm going to provide yet another sobering stat of the difficult business that I'm in. Yeah. In April, and sorry, I have to read it. In April of 2021, there was an article published in the New York Times of all the books published in 2020, and I do believe this factors in fiction and nonfiction, 98% of them sold less than 5,000 copies.
Ouch, wait a minute, what?
In 2020, according to the New York Times, 98% of all the books published sold less than 5,000 copies.
No. Oh.
And I mean,
makes me almost cry.
Well, it's challenging, and
it is.
And I think, and I don't know if I touched on this, our industry, the nonfiction kind of broadly, is especially challenging. We're competing against the internet. Someone can just type into Google anxiety issues. Why do they need to buy a book? Now, what I think we offer is a level of trust, maybe, or like that the author of that book is a PhD. Who knows what article you're reading, where that advice is coming from, but it is the reality in which we live, that you can type in whatever you want and find something on it.
Yeah. Yep.
Whereas 20 years ago, people used to go to a bookstore, or maybe 25 years ago, maybe longer, but people used to go to bookstores to get that information and buy it from books. And so it's, we're not only are we competing with other books, but we're competing with websites and news programs. And, and then that's why Lindsey's job is so difficult, because we all want to be on Oprah or featured in Time magazine, whatever it may be, but so do every other publisher, every other book, every other content creator, Instagram, like we're all competing for the same space. So it's really challenging.
Yeah.
Not to be a Debbie Downer though.
No, I think, well, somebody just said that the internet is information, books are transformative. much more influential. So I agree with you. And, I think with platforms like Best Ever You, while we might have content like that, one of our biggest things, and I said this from the beginning when I created Best Ever You, was it's always going to point back to that expert, and always going back to the expert, and with promotion about their book. Like if you look at our magazine, it's filled with, here's the article, but here's the author in their book. So it's really important to me that people go and track down those authors and buy their books and so forth, because there's so much more information in the book than just the article or whatever. But I love what they just typed. The internet is information, books are transformative, much more influential. That's cool. And then when you take it another step and you actually get to talk to the author or hear a podcast or see them on video or talk about their book or whatever, it's pretty cool too. So I don't know. There's lots of opportunities for information, but yeah, I didn't understand what you meant when you were saying we're competing against the internet. And now I get what you mean better when you said that.
Right. Well, because it isn't, it's, and I guess I'm being a little contradictory here. On the one hand, I'm telling you the internet's bad for information, but you're competing against social media. I think as a society, we live in we're very much now in the instant gratification mode. Whereas I don't want to take the time to read a 200-page book. I just want to watch an Instagram reel.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
I think that has an effect too.
2 more questions. If my book is good, why doesn't it just sell?
Again, I wish I had these answers. The unfortunate reality is a lot of good books don't sell, and it keeps going back to that word. How do we get it discovered? Yeah. Good is important, but it's got to get found.
Yeah. With that said, just one more question for you too, and then we can kind of wind down here. What are some tips and tricks that you would say to build your audience? Do you have any ideas there?
I think we touched on a little bit in the marketing. One, don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're a social media, novice, ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for favors. If you have people that have influence somewhere, you have to ask for help. You have to treat the book as if it's your baby, and you'll do anything for it, because the reality of the business is it's an uphill climb. So really just do anything you can to get it out there, to get exposure for it, and don't be afraid to put in the work.
Yeah. All right. Love that. Anything else before we go? This has been a wonderful conversation. I appreciate everybody's time and energy. All the people listening, you guys have typed in some marvelous comments. Is there anything that we didn't ask you that you want to add?
I don't think so. No, I mean, I appreciate you having me, and sorry for being late. And
no. Any other books you want to plug before we go?
No, I mean, seriously, we sold a few last time.
Everybody buy the Change Guide. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I thought that was obvious. You guys didn't cover that in the first hour before I was on.
No, but that wasn't the point of this at all. No, I love. That's one thing too. You guys all have a good sense of humor, so it's fun to hang out. But anything else? I'm just gonna give it a moment here. To everybody listening, is there anything you want to type in? Anything we didn't ask? Just give it a second or two. Lindsay, think about anything you didn't cover or anything.
No, I feel like we really covered everything.
Okay.
And thank you again for having me as well.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody. Okay, we got some. I bought all of yours, Elizabeth. We sold more books.
Okay, don't turn it off. Let's keep this going.
It's been a great night. Let's just stay on here for a while. No, all right, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Christine. Thank you to Christian. Everybody says that was exceptional. Loved it. Good. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, everybody, for your time and energy. And hopefully we can do more of these. It's pretty fun to kind of take the book business and talk about it, because there's a lot more. I promised I'd have an editing one. So bring some editors on. But if you have ideas for other roundtables, let me know. Type it into the chat. Everybody's saying thank you. And we're just going to go ahead and close off. So, all right, Christian, Lindsay, thank you very much. And we're going to end now. right.
All
Thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.